Every day, you and I get bombarded with negative news. And just like our bodies becomes what we eat, our minds become the information that we consume. If you want to stay positive, it's so important that you also listen to stories that inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we interview world-leading experts dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. And if you stick around, I promise you will not only be as informed as if you watch the news, you will feel uplifted, inspired, and have more positive energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Welcome. Today, Great.com talks with Erika Mayer, who is the president of AnimalOutlook.org. And if you haven't heard of them before, they are a non-profit animal protection organization that are based in Washington, D.C. And hey, if you're new here into this podcast, you definitely want to subscribe, because today we're speaking about how we can make the future better and brighter for our animals. Erika, welcome to Great.com Talks with.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited as well. So how would you describe Animal Outlook to someone that might not be familiar with your organization or the challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, Animal Outlook is a nonprofit organization. We're based in the US and we focus our work on the US. And we work to protect farmed animals. We go undercover inside factory farms. We have a legal team that challenges the status quo inside these factory farms. And we do a lot of outreach, educating consumers, reaching out to people about what's really happening behind the closed doors of these factory farms and slaughterhouses so that they can make more informed and compassionate choices in the marketplace. So we do a lot of work to promote vegan eating.
Okay. I really appreciate and admire the work that you do. If I were to donate money to some cause area within charity, it would be animal welfare, because I think probably the majority of the suffering happening on this planet right now is happening to farmed animals. So when I saw your website, I saw you had images of the horrors that is happening into these slaughterhouses. So what effect does that have on people? Do you manage to reach and convert people using these images, or do you feel like maybe some people shut off?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first important point to note is that the reason that we do the work that we do, going inside these facilities, documenting with hidden cameras the day-to-day realities, is because the meat, egg, and dairy industries are working so hard to keep the public out. They don't want the public to see what's really happening. And instead, they're using very happy images on their packaging of maybe a cow in a green pasture or a chicken laying eggs in a nest. And these are just very far from the reality of where our meat, milk, and eggs are coming from today. So we're taking the public inside these facilities through our hidden cameras to give them a glimpse of these realities, to pull back the curtains and show them what's really happening. And when most people see this, they're absolutely horrified. They're shocked and they're outraged that these animals are enduring so much abuse. And in the United States, at least, a lot of the abuses that we see on factory farms, if those same abuses were inflicted on cats and dogs, the same cats and dogs we care about and protect in our homes, that would rise to the level of criminal prosecution. But there are a lot of laws in different states that exempt what's happening inside these facilities. So it's almost like anything goes in these facilities. And that's why we work so hard to bring that, to shine that light and bring the public into these factory farms through our hidden cameras.
I think it's so needed, the work that you do. And I saw also that you recently did an investigation and you revealed horrors that were happening in the dairy industry. So when you make a reveal like this, what is the consequences?
Yeah, so it varies. The first result we always get is public outrage and shock when they see what's really happening, and to demonstrate that there's a pattern of abuse. And we conduct these undercover investigations. We've been doing them for the past 25 years, and other organizations conduct them not only in the US, but also globally. And you can see this pattern of abuse. It's not just one bad apple. These are standard practices in these industries. Cruelty is a standard practice. And so the first result we always see is the public being shocked. But depending on the investigation and what we've uncovered, we might be able to challenge law enforcement on why they're not doing something to stop these abuses. We try to challenge the corporation on why they're allowing these abuses to happen in the first place. And a lot of that requires the consumers, that consumer base, to speak out. These companies are making some changes. We're seeing some of these practices being stopped, but it's because the public is reaching out with their outrage. So really what we need from these investigations is that engagement from the public to express how angered they are and how they want to see things change. And we always get letters from people saying, like emails or calls from people saying, I had no idea this was happening, and I don't want to support these companies anymore. I'm now on a path to becoming a vegetarian or vegan. And that is the most important thing that as an individual that we can do to stop these abuses, is to stop supporting these industries by choosing plant-based meals.
And is the majority of the problem and challenge coming from that the laws are allowing this, or is it that the companies are breaking the law behind hidden doors?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a little bit of both. And in a lot of cases, what's happening is considered standard practice, and the law might not be able to stop it. And in some cases where there are laws, they're not very well enforced to ensure that the animals are being protected under whatever law there might be. So it's a mixture of both. It's lack of enforcement of existing laws, and it's lack of laws to protect these animals. And that's why it's so important for us to shine that bright light so that we can show the public what's really happening.
So Animal Outlook has been shining the bright light for 25 years now. So how do you perceive the industry, the climate for these animals? How has it changed over the last 25 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed in so many ways, and we still have a very long way to go. But one of the biggest notable changes that I think we can see, and from a consumer perspective, especially, is that there are so many more vegan, plant-based options available everywhere.
Yeah.
25 years ago, you wouldn't be able to walk into a grocery store today and find a dairy aisle that is loaded with plant-based milks with so many options. Not just one or two. It's a whole wide variety of options, and they're front and center, so consumers can easily find where they are and see them. And you find the same thing in the area where you might find hamburgers. You're now finding a wide variety of meat or plant meat options. These are plant-based meat alternatives. So being able to find those alternatives is becoming easier and easier, and it's making it more mainstream, and it's making it more accessible to the public. And that goes not just with grocery stores, but even just this week, McDonald's in the US announced that it is going to be launching a McPlant line of meatless options throughout US stores in 2021. And that wasn't available 25 years ago. So being able to make that choice, that compassionate choice of saying no to animal products and yes to vegan, is one of the biggest changes that we have definitely seen. It's a thriving and growing market today.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And I think it's such a positive signal that a company like McDonald's is introducing that option, because cooking plant-based meat requires a bit of skill if you haven't done it before. So to get it in a format of a hamburger that is also something familiar, I think that's a real good introduction to someone that hasn't tried it before. So
Yeah.
with all that in mind, how do you feel? Like, we have come a far way, but still there is so much suffering that is still happening. So how do you feel about the coming 10, 20 years? What is the prognosis, and what kind of outcomes are you hoping for as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And obviously, we can't predict the future. But if the trends are following the pattern that we're seeing now, I think that we'll continue seeing the growing market of plant-based options from dairy to egg to meat. I think these are all, not only are there new companies popping up to provide these options like Beyond Meat, but we're seeing the meat industry itself starting to embrace the idea of providing protein in the form of plants to consumers. So if that shift that we're starting to see now that is really growing continues, I think that's going to elevate the plant-based market, and it is eventually going to start displacing more significantly the meat, egg, and dairy market. And right now, we're already seeing fewer and fewer consumers over the years, like generation after generation, are consuming less dairy. They're drinking a lot less milk. And so that trend we're already starting to see. And if that trend continues the way it's going, then the dairy industry is going to need to shift and potentially start making plant-based milk to stay in tune with consumer demand. So that, I think, is something we're excited to see, we're hopeful to see, and we will continue. I mean, we've been working for many years urging major corporations and food giants to make vegan options business as usual. And we're seeing that happen more and more throughout the past several years. And I think that trend is going to continue.
I think and hope so too. And I'm grateful that organizations like Animal Outlook and other animal welfare organizations are doing the work that you're doing. So for your organization then, what are you working on now? What are the next projects coming up?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so some of the work that we had typically planned for this year and next year are shifting. But we're also noticing that in the midst of talking about this pandemic, that there's a lot more dialogue about what's really happening in factory farms and slaughterhouses, as a lot of employees who are being forced to work inside these facilities, like they're forced to stay open, that they're not getting the right protections that they need from COVID. And I think that's the mindset of these facilities in terms of always focusing on profit and putting workers, animals, and the environment bottom of their list of priorities. And so these profit-driven industries, I think, it's sort of blowing wide open as to who they really are and what their mode of operation is really focused on. So that's given us a lot more opportunity to talk about some of the slaughterhouses as an example, where workers are at higher risk and so are animals. And these are slaughterhouses that are allowed to operate at a higher kill line speed. So the government is allowing them to run their slaughter speeds a lot faster. And so that means animals are suffering increasingly as a result. And so are workers, who are put at higher risk because of faster moving lines, and they're not allowed to slow the lines down. And there have been some exposés highlighting how some of these workers can't even take bathroom breaks. So they're forced to wear diapers in order to relieve themselves so that they don't get in trouble if they need to take a bathroom break. So, being able to sort of expose these industries for who they are, not just how they treat animals, but that it's a machine designed to exploit everything and everyone in its path. And animals are one of the victims of these factories. But workers are also victimized by these facilities as well, as the profit is number one. So we've had a lot more opportunity to talk with other organizations and build bridges with a lot of labor unions and environmental organizations to highlight, like, we have a common interest in seeing these, seeing how these factories operate and trying to change their practices. So that is something that will continue going forward. And we are working with coalitions on some lawsuits trying to stop some of the programs that the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture, is putting forth, allowing these line speeds to increase. We'll continue our undercover investigations, and we now have more opportunity in a virtual world to connect with more people about vegan eating. And virtual world has always been available, but now with COVID, it's just become more normal, and we're realizing that it increases our opportunity to engage with consumers, to engage with people interested in learning more about these issues, and reaching out to companies to demand more vegan options.
Yeah, I'm happy to see so many things are coming together to stop these horrible practices. And there has recently been a power shift in the US where you are from. And I know the new president, Joe Biden, is going back into the Paris Agreement. Are similar things which will help the environment? And are similar things being done to help the conditions of animal? Is that going to have an effect?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we think about climate change and what's causing climate change, and there are a lot of things that are causing climate change, but it has been shown, in the United Nations has even acknowledged that raising animals for food is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions that helps lead to climate change. So if we highlight climate change as one of the important focus factors of how we can make an impact personally and how we can work on policies that have an impact globally, how we raise animals for food, and the fact that we don't need to eat animals in order to thrive and be healthy, that we can shift to a vegan diet as a way to protect the environment and fight against climate change. It's the idea of using our fork to fight climate change. So I think that's one of the issues that hopefully will have a lot more dialogue and conversation. And I think Greta Thunberg is a great vocal person who's talked not only about climate change, but she's a vegan, and so making those issues connect. And if we want to personally make a difference and we want to stand for something that can make a difference with others, and I think choosing plant-based options is one of the best ways we can protect the planet.
I couldn't agree more. And imagine now someone listening to this and they want to do something to help put a stop to these horrible practices, except for using their forks to make a difference. What can someone do to help out and also stay up to date with Animal Outlook?
Yeah, well, our website, animaloutlook.org, is a great place to get started. We have information about if you're learning about vegan eating. You can link to our website, tryveg.com. You can also get more engaged in our corporate campaigns. Like we were working on pushing McDonald's to add a vegan option, and they just announced that. So those are some of the campaigns that we work on. And you can read more about our undercover investigations, and sharing this information with your friends and family, whether it's by email or talking with them or posting on social media, is really an important way to spread the word and get that information out there. And of course, if you're so inclined, we are a nonprofit charity. We run on donations from individuals. So if anyone wants to make a donation to support our work, then we would be incredibly grateful. And it is our 25th anniversary, so we even have a matching campaign going on right now, where if you make a donation, we have a pool of donors who have agreed to match it, so it'll be doubled. And that will go a long way to help keep our hidden cameras rolling, our legal team active, and our campaigns going, waging and winning more and more campaigns.
Beautiful. I urge anyone listening to this to get excited and join the cause. Erika Meijer, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with Great.com Talks With today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And for you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please consider helping us out by pressing subscribe in your podcast app or on YouTube. That will greatly increase our chances to reach out in different top lists so more people can hear these important conversations on how to make the world better for humans and for animals. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.